The courthouse rose like a stone giant over downtown Jackson, Mississippi, old, gray, and unforgiving. Its tall columns cast long shadows across the steps where strangers gathered in anxious clusters. Reporters paced with cameras dangling from their necks. Families clutched papers. Officers stood rigid at the entrance, scanning every face that passed. Inside, the building smelled like polished wood, cold air, and history that never quite rested. Footsteps echoed down marble halls. Doors creaked. Somewhere, a clerk's heels clicked in rhythmic precision, as if time itself were ticking toward judgment. Courtroom 7 was already full before the gavel ever touched wood. Benches lined the room in tight rows. Some spectators whispered prayers. Others leaned forward with grim curiosity. A few stared straight ahead, stone-faced, refusing to show emotion. At the front sat Judge Harrington, silver hair, heavy glasses, and a reputation for running a strict courtroom. He adjusted his robe slowly, eyes scanning the room like a hawk searching for weakness. To his right stood the prosecution team, 3 attorneys in dark suits, stacked with files that nearly toppled over. They spoke in hushed tones, flipping through photographs of a broken warehouse door, muddy footprints, and a single, dirty boot. Beside them sat Officer Grant, tall, broad-shouldered, and tense. His uniform was crisp, metals polished, badge gleaming under fluorescent lights. At his feet sat Titan, a German Shepherd K9 trained to perfection. The dog's ears were alert, body still, tail resting flat on the floor. His black and tan coat shone like armor. Titan had become something of a legend in the department, the dog who never missed a scent. Tonight he sat like a statue. On the opposite side of the courtroom, Maria Lopez gripped the edge of the defense table so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her dark hair was pulled back, eyes rimmed red from sleepless nights. In her trembling hands rested a faded photograph, her younger brother, smiling beside a pickup truck he loved more than anything. He was sitting in jail now, accused of a crime she swore he didn't commit. Beside her sat her daughter, Luna. 3 years old, tiny shoes dangling inches above the floor, pink dress slightly wrinkled, hair tied in messy pigtails. While the adults around her drowned in tension, Luna hummed softly to herself, tracing circles on the wooden bench with her fingertip. She didn't understand murder, evidence, or trials. She only knew her uncle was gone. The bailiff stepped forward. "All rise." Chairs scraped loudly as the room stood. Judge Harrington entered, settling into his seat like a king returning to his throne. His gaze lingered briefly on Luna, a flicker of something human crossing his face before hardening again. "You may be seated." The courtroom exhaled. The prosecution began immediately, laying out their case in calm, polished language. They spoke of a break-in at a shipping warehouse on River Street, missing crates, broken locks. Mud tracked through the building like a trail of guilt. Then came the star of their case, Titan. "Your Honor," the lead prosecutor said, packing slowly. K9 Titan was deployed to the scene. He tracked a scent from the warehouse to the exact location of the defendant's vehicle. A photo appeared on a large screen behind the jury, Titan sitting beside a muddy boot in tall grass. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Maria's breath hitched. Her attorney leaned toward her and whispered, "Stay calm." But calm felt impossible. Titan shifted slightly, nails clicking against the tile. His amber eyes scanned the room, not aggressive, but intensely aware. Then, without warning, Luna slid off the bench. Her small shoes hit the floor with a soft tap. Maria reached out instinctively. "Luna, sit down, baby." But the girl had already stepped into the aisle. The courtroom didn't notice at first. Voices continued. Papers shuffled. The prosecutor spoke confidently, gesturing toward Titan like he was a flawless machine. Luna walked slowly. Each step echoed faintly in the silence that followed her. She moved past empty seats, her face serious in a way that didn't belong to a child. Her eyes were fixed, not on the judge, not on her mother, not on the jury. On Titan. Officer Grant stiffened. Titan's ears perked higher. The prosecutor paused mid-sentence. That was when the room truly noticed her. A 3-year-old, alone in the center aisle, small hand rising into the air. Her finger pointed steady, unwavering, directly at the police dog. The courtroom went still. Not quiet. Still. Like time had snapped in half. A woman in the back gasped. A reporter's pen dropped onto the floor. Someone coughed nervously. Maria jumped to her feet. Luna, come back here. But Luna didn't move. Her gaze never left Titan. Titan didn't move either, but something in his body changed. His tail curled slightly. His breathing deepened. His chest rose and fell more noticeably. Officer Grant tightened his grip on the leash. Judge Harrington leaned forward, resting his elbows on the bench. "Ma'am," he said to Maria, voice sharp, "retrieve your child." Maria rushed into the aisle, heart pounding in her ears. She scooped Luna up, pressing her close to her chest. "Why did you do that?" she whispered frantically. Luna didn't answer. She kept staring over her mother's shoulder, straight at Titan. A low growl vibrated in the dog's throat. So soft most people almost missed it. Almost. The prosecutor cleared his throat loudly. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular." Bam! The gavel struck wood like a gunshot. "Recess," Judge Harrington declared, 10 minutes. Chairs scraped again as people rose in a confused shuffle. Reporters rushed toward the hallway. Whispers exploded into full-blown chatter. What just happened? Did that kid know the dog? Did she see something? Maria collapsed back into her seat, clutching Luna tighter than ever. Her daughter buried her face against her shoulder, small fingers gripping her blouse. Across the room, Officer Grant knelt beside Titan, stroking his neck. "It's okay, boy," he murmured. "She's just a child." But Titan didn't relax. His eyes remained locked on the doorway where Maria and Luna sat. And in the crowded hallway outside, a man in a worn brown jacket stopped mid-step when he saw the commotion. He didn't enter the courtroom. He simply watched. From behind a pillar. His gaze slid toward Maria, then toward the little girl in her arms. A faint smile crossed his face, quick, chilling, and gone in a second. Inside Courtroom 7, Luna lifted her head slowly and whispered into her mother's ear. "He remembers me." And somewhere deep in the building, an unseen door creaked open. The hallway outside Courtroom 7 sounded like a storm breaking loose. Reporters flooded the marble corridor in a sudden rush, cameras clicking, microphones thrust forward, whispers bouncing off the high ceiling. The scent of coffee mixed with tension. Lawyers hurried past clutching files. Spectators clustered in tight groups, replaying the moment over and over in breathless tones. "Did you see that kid?" She pointed right at the dog. That wasn't normal. Inside the courtroom, the air felt heavier than before, thicker, almost suffocating. Judge Harrington remained seated, fingers steepled, eyes narrowed in deep thought. The prosecution team huddled together, speaking in clipped, irritated whispers. Their confidence, so polished moments earlier, now looked cracked at the edges. Officer Grant stood near the front of the room, Titan sitting obediently at his side. On the surface, the dog looked calm, perfectly trained, perfectly controlled. But anyone watching closely could see the difference. Titan's ears twitched constantly. His breathing was slower, deeper. His gaze kept drifting toward the doorway, where Maria and Luna had retreated. Maria sat in her seat again, arms wrapped around her daughter like iron. Her heart still hammered against her ribs. She rocked slightly, back and forth, as if trying to steady herself and Luna at the same time. "Why did you point?" she whispered softly, brushing hair from Luna's face. "Why, baby?" Luna didn't look scared. She didn't look confused. She looked certain. Her small hand rested flat against her mother's chest, feeling the rapid thump of her heartbeat. Then, in a voice barely louder than a breath, she spoke again. "He knows." Maria's stomach dropped. Across the aisle, Mr. Collins, her defense attorney, leaned forward. "What did she say?" he asked gently. Maria swallowed. "She said the dog knows." Collins glanced toward Titan, then back to Luna. His brow creased. Before he could press further, the bailiff stepped inside. "Court will resume in 5 minutes." The hallway slowly funneled back into the courtroom. People took their seats again, but the mood had shifted completely. What had once been a quiet, procedural trial now felt like a live wire ready to spark. The judge finally stood. "Let the record reflect," he said, voice measured, "that the child's behavior was unexpected and disruptive. We will proceed with caution." The prosecution straightened their jackets, clearly eager to regain control. The lead prosecutor cleared his throat and returned to the screen behind the jury. The image of Titan sitting beside the muddy boot appeared again, enlarged now, filling the wall. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice firm, "this photograph represents the cornerstone of our case. K9 Titan followed a clear scent trail from the warehouse to the defendant's vehicle. This is standard, reliable police procedure." A juror shifted in their seat. Another glanced toward Luna. Titan remained perfectly still, except for his tail. It tapped once. Then again. Officer Grant adjusted the leash. The prosecutor continued, describing the warehouse break-in in meticulous detail, shattered glass glittering on concrete, crates ripped open, tools scattered like chaos frozen in time. But as he spoke, something subtle began to change in the room. A low, almost imperceptible murmur spread through the gallery. Eyes kept drifting back to Luna. To the child who had walked into the aisle without fear. To the finger pointed at the police dog. Maria felt every stare like a weight pressing down on her. She pulled Luna closer, shielding her from the attention. Then the prosecutor made a critical mistake. He turned his back to Titan. In that moment, Luna slid off the bench again. This time, Maria didn't grab her fast enough. The little girl stepped into the aisle not boldly, but slowly, as if drawn by an invisible thread. A gasp rippled through the room. "Ma'am," the bailiff barked, moving toward her. But Judge Harrington raised a hand. "Wait." The room held its breath. Luna walked closer to the front of the courtroom. Closer to Titan. Officer Grant's grip tightened visibly. Titan lifted his head, muscles coiling beneath his fur. Luna stopped a few feet away. She didn't point this time. She simply stood there, staring. Then she whispered something so soft only a few people could hear. "You came back." Titan's ears flattened. A low growl rolled through his chest. The sound wasn't aggressive, it was unsettled. Almost nervous. The prosecutor snapped around. "Your Honor, this is unacceptable." Bam! The gavel struck again. "Order!" Judge Harrington leaned forward sharply. "Officer Grant, remove the dog." Grant hesitated. For the first time all morning, the trained officer looked uncertain. He gently tugged the leash. Titan didn't move. Another tug. Still nothing. The courtroom filled with whispers. Then Luna took one small step forward. Titan finally moved, but not toward her. He stepped back. A trained police dog retreating from a 3-year-old. Gasps echoed off the walls. Maria's heart pounded so hard she felt dizzy. Grant knelt beside Titan, voice tight. "Easy, boy, easy." The judge's face darkened. "Take him out now." Grant led Titan toward the side door. As they passed, Luna turned her head, watching them leave, eyes locked on the dog until he disappeared. Only then did she return to her mother. Outside in the hallway, reporters exploded into motion again. Inside, the tension had become electric. Mr. Collins leaned toward Maria. "Your daughter knows something," he whispered, "whether she understands it or not." Maria's throat felt dry. "She's 3. 3-year-olds notice things adults miss," he replied quietly. The prosecution tried to recover, but the damage was done. Jurors exchanged uneasy looks. The judge called for another brief recess. This time the courtroom emptied faster, like people escaping a fire. In the hallway, Maria stood against the wall, clutching Luna to her chest. Her hands trembled. A young journalist approached cautiously. "Mrs. Lopez, can you tell us what your daughter said to the dog?" Maria shook her head, eyes glassy. "Not now." Across the corridor, Officer Grant stood alone near a window, staring out at the street below. His reflection wavered in the glass, a man who suddenly looked older than his years. He replayed the night of the warehouse in his mind. Rain, mud, sirens, Titans circling the property, nose to the ground, tail rigid. And then hesitation. Just a second. A pause before sitting beside the boot. A pause he had brushed off as exhaustion. But now that pause felt heavy. Too heavy. Down the hall, Mr. Collins hurried toward the defense room, phone pressed to his ear. "We need every piece of footage from that night," he said urgently. "Body cams, dash cams, street cameras, everything." Back in the courtroom, Luna sat quietly beside her mother, swinging her legs again as if nothing had happened. Maria leaned close. "Baby, who do you think the dog is?" Luna didn't hesitate. "The one who was there." Maria felt chills crawl up her spine. At that exact moment, a man in a brown jacket stood in the shadows of the upper gallery, unnoticed by most of the room. He watched Maria. He watched Luna. And when Luna glanced up toward him, as if sensing his presence, his smile returned. Slower this time. Sharper. Luna's small body stiffened. She pointed not at the dog, not at the judge, not at the jury. She pointed toward the back of the courtroom, straight at the man in the shadows. And before anyone else could turn around, the lights flickered. When the lights steadied, the courtroom felt different. Not louder, not quieter. Heavier, as if something invisible had stepped inside and refused to leave. Several people craned their necks toward the back gallery where Luna had pointed. A few spectators whispered frantically, but by the time their eyes reached the upper benches, the man in the brown jacket was gone. Only an empty seat remained. Judge Harrington rubbed his temple, clearly irritated. "If there is a power issue in this building, maintenance will address it. We will not allow theatrics in my courtroom." Yet even his voice lacked its earlier authority. The bailiff cleared his throat. "Your Honor, hallway cameras show no outage in the rest of the building." The judge froze for half a second. A small, almost invisible pause. Then he straightened. "Proceed." But nobody felt like proceeding. Maria held Luna tighter than before, her daughter now pressed against her shoulder, eyes still searching the back of the room. Mr. Collins stood near the defense table, already scribbling furious notes on a legal pad. Across the aisle, Officer Grant sat rigidly on a bench near the side door, Titan no longer beside him. His uniform still looked sharp, but his face had lost its certainty. The calm, unshakable confidence of a seasoned K-9 officer was cracking. In the hallway, the recess buzzed with chaos. Reporters replayed the footage on their phones, the child stepping forward, the dog retreating, the lights flickering. Every clip looked stranger than the last. Inside the courtroom, the judge called the session back to order. "Defense may approach." Mr. Collins moved to the bench, speaking in low tones with Judge Harrington. The prosecutor leaned in as well, clearly uneasy. Maria couldn't hear the words, but she saw the expressions: tight jaws, raised eyebrows, sharp hand gestures. Finally, Collins returned. "We're requesting full disclosure of all K-9 footage from the night of the warehouse," he whispered to Maria. "Every camera, every angle." The prosecution stiffened immediately. Judge Harrington sighed. "Granted, if there is relevant material, it will be reviewed in this court." Within minutes, a large screen flickered to life. The room dimmed slightly as grainy bodycam footage filled the wall behind the jury. The date stamped in the corner read, October 14, 11:42 p.m. Rain hammered against pavement like broken glass. Police lights splashed red and blue across a crumbling warehouse on River Street. Wind rattled loose metal. Floodlights glared against slick concrete. Titan appeared first, nose low, tail rigid, breath visible in the cold air. Officer Grant's voice came through the speaker, steady but tense. "Search." Titan moved like a bullet released from a gun, weaving through tall grass, circling the perimeter. Mud splashed against his legs. His ears flicked at every sound: sirens, distant traffic, the creak of the old building. The courtroom leaned forward in unison. Maria stared at the screen, heart pounding. Then the footage shifted. Another bodycam angle, this one from a younger officer standing near the warehouse entrance. For a moment, everything looked ordinary. Rain, darkness, police tape flapping in the wind. Then, at the edge of the frame, a shadow crossed. A figure, not close enough to see clearly, but unmistakable. A tall silhouette moving along the far side of the building, limping slightly as he walked. Gasps rippled through the room. "Pause it," Collins said sharply. The video froze. The figure stood half hidden behind a rusted metal door, face in darkness, body blurred by rain and distance. The prosecutor straightened. "That proves nothing." But even as he spoke, Titan appeared again on the screen, now circling the back of the warehouse. And that was when it happened. Titan slowed. His nose lifted from the ground. For just a moment the dog stopped. He turned his head toward the shadowed figure. The man, whoever he was, stepped backward, disappearing behind the building. Titan hesitated. The pause lasted barely a second. But it was there, clear as day. Then Titan resumed his search, trotting toward a patch of tall grass where the muddy boot lay. He sat beside it. The camera zoomed in. Murmurs filled the courtroom. Judge Harrington tapped his pen against the bench. "Continue." The video rolled again, this time showing Officer Grant approaching, flashlight sweeping across the boot. He praised Titan quietly, clipped the leash, and radioed in the find. But Collins had already seen what he needed. He turned toward the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, a trained K-9 does not hesitate unless something is wrong with the scent, the environment, or the handler's direction." The prosecutor snapped back. "A 1-second pause is not reasonable doubt." Before Collins could respond, Luna shifted in her seat. She leaned forward, staring at the screen with an intensity that made several jurors uneasy. When the shadowed figure appeared again, frozen mid-step, Luna's small body stiffened. Her breath caught. Maria noticed immediately. "Baby, what is it?" Luna didn't blink. Her eyes stayed locked on the man in the video. Then she whispered, clear enough for those nearby to hear. "That's him." A chill swept the room. The judge straightened so abruptly, his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Who?" Maria whispered urgently. Luna pressed her face into her mother's shoulder, but her voice was certain. "The man from the night." The gallery erupted into hushed chaos. The prosecutor slammed his hand on the table. "Objection! The child cannot be treated as a witness." Judge Harrington held up a hand. Enough. He turned to Collins. Explain. Collins took a slow breath. Your Honor, this child may have seen something no adult did. Grant shifted in his seat, fingers tightening around his cap. The screen flickered again as the footage advanced, showing Titan moving away from the boot, then suddenly stopping near a chain-link fence at the edge of the property. Another camera angle appeared. This one caught something chilling. A footprint muddy, uneven, slightly dragging at the heel. A limp. The same limp as the shadowed figure. Whispers grew louder. Mr. Collins pointed. That track does not match the defendant's gait. The prosecution scrambled through files, suddenly defensive. But the room's attention wasn't on them anymore. It was on Luna. She clung to her mother, eyes wide, trembling now for the first time. He picked me up, she murmured. Maria's blood turned to ice. What? Luna's voice was tiny. I was outside cold and he carried me. The courtroom went deathly silent. Officer Grant's face drained of color. On the screen, another clip began, this one from a streetlight camera 2 blocks from the warehouse. A man in a brown jacket walked beneath the light for a brief second. His face was still mostly shadowed, but enough was visible to send a ripple of recognition through the room. Collins turned slowly toward Grant. Do you know this man, officer? Grant swallowed hard. The judge leaned forward. Answer the question. Grant's voice cracked. I recognize the jacket. A murmur swept the jury box. The footage zoomed further. The man paused beneath the streetlight. For just an instant, he turned his head, as if he knew he was being watched. And then he smiled. Not friendly. Not nervous. A thin, deliberate smile. Luna gasped softly. On the defense table, Maria felt her heart slam against her ribs. That's him, Luna whispered again. Judge Harrington's voice cut through the tension like steel. Identify him. The courtroom held its breath. Officer Grant stared at the frozen image, rain streaking across the man's face, the limp visible in his stance, the jacket unmistakable. Finally he spoke. His name is Caleb Rivers. A collective inhale filled the room. The prosecutor shot to his feet. Objection, this is irrelevant speculation. Bam! The gavel slammed down harder than before. Sit down, the judge snapped. Grant ran a hand over his face. He used to be an informant for our department. A low buzz spread through the gallery. Collins turned toward the jury. An informant present at the scene, with a limp in matching tracks found at the warehouse. The judge folded his hands. Continue. The video resumed, showing Titan circling near the fence again. This time, the camera caught something new. A small flash of movement near the dog's harness. A hand brief, barely visible, reaching toward Titan. Gasps exploded across the room. Enhance that frame, Collins demanded. The image sharpened. And there it was. Caleb Rivers kneeling beside Titan, fingers touching the dog's gear. The courtroom went into chaos. Maria clutched Luna so tightly, her knuckles turned white. Officer Grant stood abruptly, chair crashing behind him. This is impossible, he muttered. But the evidence hung on the screen, undeniable. Caleb had been there. Too close. Too involved. Judge Harrington slammed the gavel repeatedly until the room fell quiet. Order. Mr. Collins turned slowly toward Grant. Officer, did you know Caleb Rivers was at that scene? Grant opened his mouth. Then stopped. Across the room, Luna lifted her head from her mother's shoulder. Her small eyes locked on Titan's empty space near the front of the courtroom. And in a voice clear enough to cut through the silence, she whispered. He touched him and told him to sit. At that exact moment, somewhere outside the courthouse, a man in a brown jacket stepped onto a crowded sidewalk, looked up at the building, and smiled again. The courtroom had gone unnervingly quiet. Every eye followed Luna, her tiny figure pressed against her mother's side, fingers gripping Maria's blouse like she could anchor herself to reality. Even the judge seemed caught between disbelief and disbelief. The gallery held its breath, officers and attorneys froze in mid-motion. Titan was gone, led to the side by Officer Grant, but the room still carried the heavy, invisible weight of what had just been revealed. Outside, rain streaked the courthouse windows, mirroring the storm that had broken inside. The bodycam footage replayed in everyone's mind, Caleb Rivers kneeling beside Titan, fingers brushing the dog's harness in that split second, the limp, the shadowy figure. Every frame made the prosecution squirm. Every second added a crack to the carefully constructed case against Maria's brother. Mr. Collins took a deep breath. "Your Honor," he said, voice steady, "we need to review every piece of footage from that night. Every camera angle, every officer's body cam, every streetlight feed. There is evidence here that was overlooked, evidence that changes the entire narrative." The judge nodded slowly, but his eyes stayed on Luna. "This will take time. Court is adjourned until this evidence can be properly reviewed. Everyone remain available." The gallery emptied quickly, reporters crowding hallways, phones capturing every whispered exchange. Maria stayed seated, holding Luna close. She could feel the child's heartbeat against her chest, rapid, anxious but purposeful. The tiny girl had seen something, remembered something that adults had missed, and somehow she had communicated it with a single gesture. Later that evening, in a cramped office above the courthouse, Collins and his team worked frantically. They pulled every recording from the night of the warehouse break-in, security cameras from neighboring buildings, traffic cameras, dash cams, and the officers' body cams. The footage was grainy, blurred in places, but together it formed a mosaic of that rainy night. Titan moved through the tall grass, ears flicking, tail stiff. The muddy boot sat beside the fence, and there, for just a moment, a shadow detached itself from the darkness, moving toward the dog. Collins stopped the playback. "Freeze it there, zoom in." A figure appeared, limp evident in the way his gait dragged across the wet concrete. It was Caleb Rivers, and beside him, Titan's harness moved. A hand brushed against it. A whisper of control, subtle enough that no one had noticed before, powerful enough to command a dog trained for obedience and instinct. "What does this mean?" asked one of the junior attorneys, voice tight. Collins's jaw tightened. "It means Titan's signals that night were not his own. The pause, the hesitation, the indication toward the muddy boot, that was manipulated." Maria's hands trembled. "So my brother," her voice broke, "he didn't." Collins shook his head. "He didn't do it, and Luna, she saw it. That child recognized the truth that adults overlooked." Officer Grant sat nearby, reviewing the footage for the 10th time. His face was pale, jaw tight. I knew Caleb was dangerous, but I never imagined he'd interfere directly with a K-9 operation. He never touched a dog before." Collins looked at him sharply. "And yet he did, that night. You saw it, didn't you?" Grant nodded slowly, voice low. "I saw a hesitation in Titan that night, a pause before the boot. I wrote it off as confusion, the rain, the shadows. I trusted my dog. I trusted the procedure. But now, seeing this, it makes sense." Maria clutched Luna's tiny hand. She remembered him. Grant's eyes widened. "She recognized him. She saw him touch Titan. And you said something," she said, "the one from the night." Maria nodded, tears welling. She was three years old, and she knew more than anyone in that room. Collins turned back to the screen. "We need to pinpoint everything, frame by frame. That shadow, the hand on Titan, the limp. We need to expose him completely." Over the next few hours, they enhanced the footage, comparing angles. Every detail mattered: the drip of rain from the warehouse roof, Titan's shifting weight, Caleb's deliberate movements, the faint glint of metal in his hand. It all built a story that the courtroom had yet to see, manipulation, deception, and a child who had witnessed it without realizing the stakes. By late evening, a pattern emerged. Caleb had arrived at the warehouse before the theft, long before Titan was deployed. He had tampered with evidence, planted the muddy boot near the fence, and trained Titan subtly to indicate the false trail. Everything had been calculated. Everything had been set up to frame Maria's brother. Colin stared at the screen, grim. This is huge, but if Caleb realizes we're onto him, then he'll run, Officer Grant said quietly. Suddenly, a quiet ping echoed from Collins's laptop, an email alert. The subject line, "We know you're looking." Collins froze. What the hell? He opened the message. It contained a single image, a dark alleyway, a figure in a brown jacket, face still obscured but unmistakable, Caleb Rivers, standing under a flickering streetlight looking directly at the camera. Maria gasped, He's watching us." Grant's voice was tight. "Yes, and he's close." Luna, sitting quietly on her mother's lap, lifted her head. Her small eyes were wide. "He's coming back," she whispered. Maria clutched her tighter. "No, baby, it's okay, he can't." Before she could finish, the office door creaked open. A shadow fell across the desk. Both Collins and Grant instinctively looked up. Nothing was there. Only the faint sound of rain outside. But then Titan's bark echoed faintly through the office's open window, a deep, low warning, unnervingly close. Maria froze. "He's here." And somewhere in the shadows of Jackson that night, Caleb Rivers moved silently through the rain, watching, calculating, waiting. The room fell into silence. But Luna, small and unafraid, whispered again, almost to herself, "He's still there." And in that moment, everyone understood the night was far from over. The city streets outside Jackson were slick with rain, neon signs reflecting like fractured mirrors on the wet asphalt. Inside a small office above the courthouse, the tension was thick enough to choke. Maria pressed Luna to her chest, feeling the child shiver despite the warmth of the room. Her 3-year-old's tiny hand traced patterns on her blouse as if mapping the fear in the air. Officer Grant paced near the window, shoulders hunched, eyes flicking from the screen to the dark street below. Titan lay quietly at his feet, alert but subdued, a shadow of the heroic K9 he usually was. There had been hesitation on that night at the warehouse, hesitation that had haunted Grant ever since. And now, with the enhanced footage playing again, he understood why. Collins stared at the screen, jaw tight. Look at him. Caleb Rivers, limp, hand on Titan. The way he manipulated the dog to follow a false trail, everything was staged. Your brother didn't do this, Maria, but someone else did. Maria's lips trembled. But why him? Why Caleb? Grant stopped packing, exhaling sharply. Because I knew him. Every head turned toward him. You knew him? Collins asked, incredulous. Grant swallowed. Yes, Caleb Rivers was an informant for the department years ago. I partnered with him on several cases. He was reliable, loyal, until he was. Maria's eyes widened. What do you mean? Grant ran a hand over his face, his voice low. I didn't realize how deep his manipulation went. He was clever, calculating. I thought I could control him or at least predict him. That night at the warehouse, I trusted the routine, Titan, me, the team, everything standard. I didn't see Caleb's hand in it until now. I didn't see the pause, the hesitation, the manipulation. Collins leaned in. Wait, are you saying you knew Caleb could interfere that night? Grant shook his head. No, I didn't know, but I should have. That pause in Titan, it was subtle. I thought it was Titan's confusion. The rain, the shadows, I didn't question it, I should have. Maria clutched her daughter's hand tighter. So, he set this all up. My brother Titan, everything. Grant's voice was heavy with guilt. Yes, and I didn't see it until now. Collins pulled out his tablet. We need to show the jury every detail, the hesitation, Caleb's manipulation, Titan's behavior. It's our only chance to prove your brother's innocence. The room fell silent for a moment. Luna, usually quiet at times like this, suddenly lifted her head, eyes wide. "He carried me," she whispered. Maria's blood ran cold. "Baby, what?" "He picked me up," Luna repeated, small voice steady. "I was outside, he carried me home." Grant froze. "What?" Maria swallowed hard. "That night, my brother went to look for her after she ran off in the rain. She's saying Caleb took her." Collins nodded. "It matches the footage. Caleb was there, manipulating Titan, planting evidence. And according to Luna, he was also watching, waiting, taking advantage of the chaos." The weight of the revelation hit everyone in the room. Titan's presence, once a symbol of truth and justice, now carried the shadow of deception. Grant paced again, hands running through his hair. "I should have known something was wrong. I trusted Caleb. I vouched for him. I trained Titan to follow procedure, but I didn't anticipate he'd be used as a tool." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "He framed my brother with Titan." Grant lowered his gaze. "Yes, and I failed to protect the dog, the evidence, and you." Collins tapped the screen, pointing at a frozen frame. "Here, Caleb kneeling by Titan, manipulating the dog. That hesitation, it's proof. But we also need to consider Luna's testimony. A 3-year-old, noticing details adults missed. She remembers the night, recognizes the culprit. That's powerful." Maria pulled Luna closer. "Baby, do you remember anything else?" Luna's small face tightened in concentration. "He smiled at me, and then he went away." A shiver ran down Grant's spine. He recognized the warning. Caleb had been watching from the shadows all along. He was careful, calculating, precise. And Luna had seen him. Collins rubbed his chin. "So, we have Titan's manipulated behavior, the bodycam footage, Luna's memory, and Caleb's connection to the department. That's our narrative. The prosecution will struggle to discredit this, but we also need to anticipate his next move." Grant's jaw tightened. "His next move," his voice dropped. "He's dangerous, more than just clever. He won't stay hidden. And once he realizes we're uncovering him, he might try to silence anyone who stands in his way." Maria felt her stomach twist. "So he could come here." Grant's eyes met hers. "Yes, and if he does, he's unpredictable." The room fell silent, each person contemplating the danger they faced. Outside, rain continued to fall in steady sheets. The lights of Jackson streets glimmered like broken stars, but inside the storm was personal. Titan shifted, ears flicking, growl low and soft, a warning. He knew. Collins looked at Maria. "We need a strategy. We protect the child. We protect your brother. And we expose Caleb Rivers completely." Maria nodded, though fear gripped her heart. "But how?" Before Collins could answer, a loud ping echoed from his tablet, an alert, an incoming email. He opened it. A single image appeared. A figure in a brown jacket standing under a flickering streetlight, face partially obscured, limp noticeable, and in the shadows his gaze locked directly at the camera. "Caleb," Maria whispered, her voice barely audible. Grant stood abruptly. "He's close, too close." Collins leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "He knows we're onto him." Luna, small and resolute, tugged at her mother's sleeve. "He's coming back," she whispered. A chill swept the room. Titan growled again, low and steady. And somewhere in the darkness of Jackson, Caleb Rivers moved silently through the rain, watching, waiting, calculating his next move with the patience of a predator. Maria held Luna tight, breathing shaking, realizing the danger wasn't just past. It was immediate. Caleb Rivers wasn't finished, not by a long shot. The night outside reflected the tension inside. Rain, shadows, and the faint glint of something unseen, lurking. And in that moment, everyone knew. The real danger had only just begun. The streets of Jackson were slick and empty, rain washing the neon reflections into blurry streaks. Inside a dimly lit office above the courthouse, the team worked feverishly, eyes glued to monitors that replayed every angle from the night of the warehouse break-in. Titan lay quietly at Officer Grant's feet, ears flicking as if sensing the tension in the air. Maria clutched Luna to her chest, the girl trembling but alert. Her tiny fingers clutched the edge of her mother's shirt, as if anchoring herself against an invisible current of fear. Collins had pulled up the final bodycam footage, enhanced and slowed frame by frame. Every second mattered. The limping shadow, Caleb kneeling beside Titan, the subtle manipulation of the dog, the muddy boot that had led the entire case astray. And now Collins had caught something even more unsettling, a faint glint of metal in Caleb's hand, something tiny, something deliberate. "That's it," Collins muttered, leaning closer. He didn't just manipulate Titan, he tampered with evidence. That boot, the fence, Titan's behavior, everything was staged. Officer Grant's eyes narrowed. I knew he was smart. I knew he'd find ways to get under the radar, but I never imagined he'd use Titan directly, our K9. My dog, our evidence. I failed to protect both. Maria shook her head, tears streaming. How could he do all this? Why? Grant ran a hand over his face. Because he's dangerous, because he's calculating, because he knows people trust him and he'll exploit that trust. Collins tapped rapidly on the tablet. We need to identify every point of contact, every step Caleb took that night, every camera, every officer's perspective, every streetlight. If we can piece together his route, we can expose him fully. But we also need to anticipate his next move. Titan stirred at Grant's feet, low growl vibrating in his chest. The dog's gaze flicked toward the office window. Maria followed the line of Titan's eyes and felt her stomach tighten. Outside, the rain cast long shadows across the street, and for just a moment she thought she saw movement, a figure in a brown jacket, standing still, watching the building. "Did you see that?" she whispered. Grant froze. "I think I did." Collins leaned forward. "That's him, Caleb, he's close, he's been watching." The office fell silent. The hum of computers and the patter of rain on the roof were the only sounds. Everyone instinctively drew closer to the monitors, as if the digital evidence could shield them from the real danger lurking outside. Suddenly a phone rang sharp, piercing, unexpected. Collins grabbed it. The caller ID flashed, unknown. He answered cautiously, "Hello." A distorted voice hissed through the speaker. "You're looking too closely. You shouldn't have. She remembers, he remembers. I'll be there soon." The line went dead. Maria froze. He knows we're onto him. Grant's hand went to his holster, then paused. "We need to secure this building. Now, Titan, stay." The dog shifted, growl low, hair slightly raised along his spine. Collins's eyes narrowed. "We need to alert the authorities, the building, the courthouse, everyone who could be in danger." Outside, the rain intensified, washing the city streets in sheets of silver. And somewhere in the darkness, Caleb Rivers moved, silent, precise, patient. He had never failed before, and he wasn't about to start now. Collins pulled up the enhanced footage again. "See here," he said, pointing to a frame frozen in time. Caleb's limp, his hand brushing Titan's harness, the glint of something metallic in his fingers. "This is undeniable. He tampered, he lied, and now he's escalating." Maria clutched Luna tighter. "He took her that night," she whispered. "He could take her again." Grant's face hardened. "Not if I can help it. We'll protect her. We'll protect your brother, but we have to move fast." Titan suddenly growled again, low and warning. His gaze shifted to the office door. Collins froze. "What is it?" The door handle rattled. A shadow stretched across the threshold. Maria's heart skipped. "He's here." A tall figure in a brown jacket slipped inside. The dim light caught just enough of his face to reveal sharp eyes, calculating, calm. His limp was subtle but unmistakable. "Caleb Rivers." Grant stepped forward, hand on his sidearm. "Stay back," he barked. Caleb raised his hand slowly, a faint smile playing on his lips. Relax, he said softly. I'm not here to hurt anyone yet. Collins's voice was tight. How did you find us? Caleb tilted his head. I watch, I wait. I know when people look too closely, and now you're looking too closely. Maria pressed Luna behind her, shaking. What do you want? Caleb's eyes flicked to Titan, who had moved to stand protectively beside Grant. I want what's mine, he said, voice low. And right now, that's control. Over the evidence, over the story, over everyone who interferes. Grant's jaw tightened. You're not taking anyone, Caleb, not the child, not the dog, not the evidence. Caleb smiled faintly, stepping closer. Ah, you misunderstand. I never take. I manipulate, I control. And control is far more powerful than fear. Collins pulled out his tablet. You've already been caught. Every move you made is on tape. Your entire plan exposed. Caleb glanced at the screen. Do you really think you understand? His gaze flicked to Luna. The child remembers, the dog remembers, and I remember her too. Titan growled again, low and menacing. Caleb's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Then he moved, quick, deliberate, slipping toward the door. We'll finish this later, he said softly, almost as a whisper. But remember, the night has many eyes, and I am among them. Before anyone could react, Caleb disappeared into the rain outside. The office fell silent. The only sound was the pounding of rain and Titan's heavy panting. Maria held Luna to her chest. He's gone for now. Grant's voice was low but steady. For now, but he's out there and he's watching. Collins rubbed his face, leaning back. We need a plan, immediate, airtight. He can't slip through again. Not tonight, not ever. Outside, the storm raged. And somewhere in the shadows, Caleb Rivers waited, calculating, patient, knowing that his next move would decide everything. Titan's ears twitched. His eyes scanned the darkened streets outside the window. The dog knew what was coming. And Luna, small and resolute, whispered to her mother. He's coming back. He won't stop. Courthouse had never felt more alive, or more dangerous. Rain hammered against the tall windows, the persistent roar outside mingling with the tension inside. Courtroom 7 was filled to capacity again, but this time the air was taut as if every breath might ignite an unseen fuse. Maria held Luna close, the little girl's eyes darting between the monitors and the entrance. Her tiny hand gripped her mother's sleeve, knuckles white. Luna had seen too much, remembered too much. She had already pointed out Caleb Rivers once. Now everyone waited to see if she would recognize him again. Officer Grant sat rigid near the front, Titan at his side. The dog's fur bristled slightly, ears forward, body coiled like a spring. He had sensed Caleb's presence before, the subtle shift in the air, the faint scent of the man's cologne, the way his footsteps had been deliberate yet hidden. Titan's instincts were sharper than any human's, and right now they screamed danger. Judge Harrington called the court to order. Let the record reflect the presence of all parties and the resumption of proceedings. Counsel, proceed with evidence presentation. Collins stepped forward, calm but intense. Your Honor, we are prepared to present evidence that directly implicates Caleb Rivers in the orchestration of the break-in at River Street warehouse. This evidence will also demonstrate that the defendant, Maria Lopez's brother, was framed. The prosecution, visibly rattled, shot sharp glances toward Titan and Officer Grant. Their confidence had been fractured by the enhanced bodycam footage, the limp, the subtle manipulation, and most importantly, the child's testimony. Collins signaled for the first video to be displayed. The grainy footage filled the large screen behind the jury, Titan moving through the tall grass, the muddy boots sitting beside the fence. And then, the unmistakable shadow appeared. Caleb Rivers kneeling beside Titan, hand brushing against the dog's harness. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. The jury leaned forward, eyes wide. Collins paused the video. Ladies and gentlemen, pay attention to the dog's behavior here. Titan hesitates. He pauses. This hesitation is a signal that something is off. Titan is trained to follow the scent trail accurately, but here he is being manipulated by Caleb Rivers. Officer Grant rose, stepping forward to testify. His voice was steady but firm. "Your Honor, I have worked with Titan for over 7 years. He never hesitates unless there is confusion or external interference. That night, I believed it was environmental factors, the rain, the shadows. But now, seeing Caleb's actions, it's clear he manipulated the situation." The judge nodded, but his eyes stayed on Luna. The girl sat calmly now, small fingers interlaced in her lap. Her gaze, however, was sharp and unwavering. Collins turned to her. "Luna, can you tell us what you saw the night Caleb Rivers came to the warehouse?" The courtroom fell silent. Even the officers held their breath. Luna's small voice carried clearly. "He picked me up. He carried me. He told Titan to sit." A shiver ran through the gallery. Maria's heart pounded. She pulled her daughter closer, whispering softly, "Good girl, baby." Collins addressed the jury. This child witnessed actions that even trained adults did not notice. Caleb Rivers tampered with evidence. He manipulated Titan, and he used these events to frame an innocent man. Suddenly, the courtroom doors banged open. A gust of wind and rain swept inside, and for a split second, every eye turned toward the entrance. A figure appeared, tall, brown jacket soaked by the rain, hood partially concealing his face. His limp was noticeable even from a distance. Caleb Rivers had returned. The room froze. Officers moved instinctively, reaching for their radios. Titan growled low, stepping forward. Every muscle in the dog's body coiled, ready to spring. Caleb's eyes flicked toward the screens, then to Luna. A faint smile crossed his lips. He didn't rush. He didn't shout. He didn't move aggressively, but the tension he radiated was palpable. Judge Harrington's gavel struck sharply. "Security, remove this individual immediately." Caleb paused, tilting his head, then spoke softly, too soft for most to hear. "You think you understand, but you do not. She remembers, he remembers, and I am patient." Titan barked sharply, low and warning. Caleb stepped back toward the door, almost casually, but his gaze never left Luna. It was a predator marking its target. Officer Grant moved toward the dog, murmuring, "Stay, stay." Titan hesitated for just a moment, growl vibrating through the courtroom. He sensed the man, the threat, and the history. Maria clutched Luna tightly. "He's not leaving," she whispered. Caleb Rivers did leave, slowly, deliberately, slipping into the hallway. The courtroom doors slammed behind him. Rain and wind followed briefly, then silence fell again. The gallery erupted in whispers and murmurs. Reporters scrambled, phones lifted to capture footage. Judge Harrington slammed the gavel. "Order! This court will not be intimidated." Collins turned toward Officer Grant. "We need to anticipate his next move. He's dangerous. He knows the footage is incriminating. He won't wait for legal proceedings. He'll strike before the trial concludes." Grant's eyes narrowed. "We'll need to protect Maria, Luna, and the defendant. We can't underestimate him." Maria's chest tightened. What if he takes her again? Titan growled, low and threatening. He stepped closer to Maria and Luna, body tense. He knew. He had seen Caleb before. He had smelled him, tracked him, recognized him as a threat. Collins turned to the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is clear. The pause, the manipulation, the shadow, the child's recognition all point to one man, Caleb Rivers, and he is dangerous." The lights flickered slightly, and Titan's ears pricked. Luna stiffened, small fingers gripping her mother's arm. Outside the building, rain pounded even harder, obscuring visibility. And somewhere, just beyond the courthouse walls, Caleb Rivers watched, waited, and calculated. Maria whispered to Luna, holding her close. "We're going to be okay, baby. Titan and we won't let him touch you." The little girl's eyes never left the entrance. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "He's coming back." A deep growl resonated from Titan, low and warning. The tension in the courtroom became palpable. Every adult felt it, the sense that the danger was no longer distant. The predator had returned, and this time there would be no simple evidence. There would be confrontation. Judge Harrington's gavel echoed sharply through the room. Security, all entrances monitored. No one leaves without clearance. But outside, in the shadows of Jackson, Caleb Rivers moved silently through the rain. Every step calculated, every motion deliberate. And Titan, eyes locked on the courthouse doors, sensed the storm approaching, one that would strike the courtroom itself. Luna whispered again, small but certain, "He's here, he won't stop." And in that instant, the courthouse seemed to hold its breath. Because Caleb Rivers wasn't just a man, he was a force waiting to be unleashed. The rain outside hammered the streets of Jackson, a relentless drum that mirrored the tension inside Courtroom 7. Every seat was full, every eye focused, every heartbeat seemed louder than the gavel's strike. Maria clutched Luna to her chest, feeling the child's tiny fingers curl into her blouse. Titan stood alert beside Officer Grant, muscles coiled, ears forward, tail rigid. He could feel it, Caleb Rivers was near, and this night would demand everything from them. The judge called the court to order, voice booming. "Let the record show that proceedings have resumed. Counsel, you may present the final evidence." Collins stepped forward, unwavering. "Your Honor, members of the jury, today we reveal the truth that has been hidden, manipulated, and nearly destroyed. Every piece of evidence points to one man, Caleb Rivers. He manipulated Titan, he staged the crime scene, and he framed an innocent man." He clicked the remote and the enhanced bodycam footage played again. Titan moving through the tall grass, the muddy boot lying in the fence line, the shadow of Caleb Rivers kneeling beside the dog, a hand brushing the harness, subtle, calculated, commanding obedience. Gasps filled the courtroom. Every juror leaned forward, some gripping their chairs. Maria's pulse pounded in her ears. Luna's eyes never left the screen, small body tense with recognition. Collins turned toward her. "Luna, can you tell the court what you remember?" The courtroom quieted completely. Even the reporters held their breath. Luna's small voice, surprisingly steady, carried clearly. "He picked me up. He carried me. He told Titan to sit. He wanted to trick everyone." Titan growled low, the sound vibrating through the courtroom floor. He stepped closer to Maria and Luna, protective, alert. Every muscle in his body was ready. He knew Caleb, and he knew the danger Caleb represented. At that moment, the courtroom doors burst open. Rain and wind swept inside, and there he was, Caleb Rivers. Brown jacket soaked, hood down, face partially visible, eyes cold and calculating. His limp carried him forward, deliberate, like a predator stalking prey. Security rushed forward, but Caleb moved with uncanny speed, slipping past the first line of defense. Titan barked sharply, launching forward, teeth bared, fur bristling. Officer Grant called his name. "Titan, hold." Titan stopped just short of Caleb, growl low and warning. Every instinct screamed threat. Caleb's eyes flicked to the dog, then to Luna, and a thin, sinister smile curved his lips. "Still small, still clever," Caleb said softly. "But she remembers and she sees me. That changes everything." Judge Harrington banged the gavel. "Security, remove him now." But Caleb didn't run. He was calculated, confident. "Remove me? No, Judge, I'm not leaving until the truth is recognized, until everyone sees what they missed." Collins stepped forward. "You're under observation. You are interfering in a trial. Any movement against the child or the officers will result in immediate arrest." Caleb's eyes flicked to the jury. "Arrest? You think the law protects you? The law is fragile, the law is blind. But Titan," his gaze narrowed at the dog, "and Titan sees the truth." Titan growled, fur standing on end. He barked again, sharp, warning, lunging slightly toward Caleb. Grant's hand clamped on the leash. "Titan, easy. Stay." The courtroom held its breath. Everyone knew the moment had become more than testimony or evidence. This was confrontation. Suddenly Caleb lunged, not at Titan, not at the child, but toward the wall-mounted evidence screen, yanking the cord from its socket. Sparks flew, electricity crackling in the air. "Stop him!" Judge Harrington shouted. Grant leaped forward, Titan at his side. Security joined and a struggle ensued. But Titan, trained to protect, intercepted Caleb in an instant. The dog's weight and strength forced Caleb back, teeth bared, growling and snapping. Caleb stumbled, balance lost, and the jury gasped. Maria shielded Luna instinctively. "Titan!" she cried. Titan barked again, keeping Caleb pinned just enough for security to rush in. Officers tackled Caleb to the floor, securing him with handcuffs. The courtroom erupted in whispers and murmurs, some relieved, some stunned by the intensity. Breathing hard, Titan circled Maria and Luna, nudging the little girl gently with his snout. Luna's tiny hands patted his head, calming him. She whispered, almost in awe, "Good boy, Titan, you saved us." Officer Grant knelt beside the dog, whispering, "You did it, buddy. You protected them all." Judge Harrington finally banged the gavel. "Order! Order in the courtroom. Caleb Rivers is in custody. Let the record reflect that no one else may approach the child or the defendant until the trial resumes under controlled conditions." Collins turned to Maria. "It's over for now. Your daughter is safe. Your brother's case is about to be cleared with the evidence we've compiled." Maria hugged Luna tightly, tears streaming. "We did it, baby, we did it." Luna nodded, small face buried against her mother's shoulder. "Titan helped," she whispered. Grant smiled, relief etched in every line of his face. He knew what he had to do. Outside, rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean. Caleb Rivers had been captured, restrained, and removed, but the storm of what he had done would take longer to settle. Still, in that moment, justice, however fragile and hard-earned, prevailed. Collins addressed the jury one final time. "The evidence is clear. The manipulation of Titan, the planted boot, the shadowed figure, and the testimony of this brave child reveal the truth. The defendant is innocent. Caleb Rivers acted alone, with intent and deception." The jury members nodded, the weight of understanding settling in. The courtroom breathed collectively, the tension slowly releasing, like air from a tightly wound spring. Maria held Luna close, stroking her hair. Titan lay at their feet, calm now though alert, sensing the storm had passed. And though the rain outside still poured, inside Courtroom 7, a sense of fragile peace settled. Luna, 3 years old, small but courageous, whispered softly to her mother, "The bad man is gone." Maria kissed her forehead. "Yes, baby, he is gone." Titan barked once, sharp, protective, triumphant. And in that single moment, the courtroom, the child, the dog, and everyone present knew the truth had prevailed. Caleb Rivers may have been clever, patient, and dangerous, but in the end, bravery, instinct, and the eyes of a 3-year-old had turned the tide. Justice, real and tangible, had arrived. And as the gavel struck one final time, the courtroom, filled with witnesses, officers, and a little girl whose courage had saved everything, exhaled in unison. The storm outside slowly eased. Rain still fell, but inside the night had ended. Titan rested his head on Maria's knee, eyes soft. Luna gently patted him. Officer Grant and Collins exchanged a look of quiet relief. And in that quiet, everyone understood. Heroes come in all shapes and sizes, sometimes with fur and 4 legs, sometimes in the heart of a tiny, determined child. Justice had won, but the story and its echoes would be remembered forever.